Welcome back to the podcast of the Center for Asian American Christianity. My name is David Chao, and it's my pleasure to introduce our guest for this podcast, Mary Ann de la Torre, who is executive pastor in charge of NextGen Ministry at the North Jersey Vineyard, not too far from where I am in Central Jersey. Hi, Mary Ann.
Hello, David. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. I'm curious, how long have you been at the North Jersey Vineyard?
So I have been there for 18 years now.
Give me a snapshot of what you currently do as the executive pastor in charge of Next Gen Ministry.
Yes, I am in a lot of meetings. I oversee our kids director and our youth pastor. I lead our staff meetings. I support our lead pastor with whatever needs are there. And so it keeps me pretty busy. We have about 20 folks, part-time, full-time staff at our church. And so it's really kind of as needs come up, I get to be the problem solver and I get to figure things out. So after having been in kids ministry for over, I think, 15 years, it's a nice change and I'm enjoying it. And ministry in New Jersey, especially where we are near New York City, is just so exciting. So it's been a great season stepping into this role.
So, Mary Ann, were you born and raised in Jersey, or was there a family story before Jersey?
So no, I was not born and raised in New Jersey. Well, for the most part, I was raised in New Jersey. I was born in the Philippines, um, and moved to New Jersey in the late 80s to actually reconnect with my parents. My parents left us in the Philippines for a few years, and I know I'm not the only one in the Filipino American community that has had this experience where we've actually spent some time away from our parents. So my brother was born 3 years after I was. Then my mom first left to be a nurse in Chicago first and then moved to New Jersey. And then a few months after that, my dad joined her. And then we were without my parents for a good 2 to 3 years, being raised by my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, so that they could then establish a life for us in America. And by the time we moved to New Jersey and joined my parents, my brother was born, and so we had a new sibling to meet. And so yeah, that presented some challenges for my growing up, and but it's also, it didn't seem like a strange story to me. I felt like that happened quite a bit in our Filipino American community. So, but I had such fond memories of growing up in the Philippines, being with cousins and uncles and aunts and my grandparents. We were a pretty tight knit group from the get go. So while it was sad to not be with my parents for a few years, um, I still am grateful that we had such a close bond, even with my grandparents, because they raised us for quite a bit. So I moved to New Jersey when I was almost 7. So Tagalog was my first language, um, but everyone told me you're going to end up going to America eventually. So they actually, um, and I learned some English in school in the Philippines, but my grandmother was very strict with me learning how to at least read English. I actually was forced to read English before I understood the language, so that they could prepare me for life in America. So, um, yeah, so that was the late 80s when we moved to urban New Jersey. And then I've pretty much lived in New Jersey except for 4 years in college.
You were 7 years old when moving to Jersey from the Philippines.
Yes. Oh, I was 6. I was almost 7. I was like a month shy of turning 7.
And when you came to Jersey, say a little bit more about what family life and church life was like for you growing up.
Sure. So I think for my parents, their entire social lives basically revolved around our church. Um, when they first moved to New Jersey, my aunt, and she is the only one of my aunts who um, had gone to seminary in the Philippines. It was a fundamental Baptist seminary. She ended up marrying someone from that seminary, and they were pastoring here in New Jersey. So my parents were going to that church for quite a while, and when I first moved here with my brother, we were going there for a little bit, and then they found a then this was a Filipino American church. Then there was a Southern Baptist Filipino American church closer to our house, and that's where I primarily ended up growing up. Um, I was one of the older kids, quote unquote, at this church, and so youth group was basically I was always the oldest there. Um, but our whole felt like my parents' whole social lives revolved around church. So uh, prayer meetings would Bible studies would travel from one person's house to the next. We celebrated basically all of the holidays with people from church. Sundays was an all-day affair with we called it Agape Fellowship. After the church service, we would all eat together, and it was usually Filipino food. Um, yeah, their closest friends to this day are still at that church. The church has moved, but the people have remained very close, very tight knit.
Say a little bit more about how you found your way into the vineyard. So you've been part of the North Jersey Vineyard for 18 years, but was there a connection to the Vineyard Church prior to that?
So the way I kind of found my way into the vineyard was I had really not considered leaving the Filipino American church until I started dating someone who wasn't Filipino. And we were kind of thinking about, well, expanding. And I think at that point I did start thinking about is the Filipino American church still a fit for me? I was then in my, I think, late 20s and had a hard time connecting just culturally with folks at my parents' church. And it became a place where I just didn't have too many friends my age and felt like I was serving, but not so much receiving. And so we had started looking for a church that we could both attend, and um, the Vineyard was one of those churches. And that relationship didn't end up working out. And I was kind of in this place where I'd already said to my Filipino American pastor, I'm leaving. And so I mean, I'm sure I could have gone back, but I felt like the Holy Spirit was like, yeah, it's okay for you to try something new and expand. And the vineyard was just someplace I felt like I could do that. And so I was kind of in this place of just needing to heal. And I remember uh, just attending church, and it was nice to not be known and sit in the back a little bit for months. I would just sit in the back and during worship time and just cry because I just wasn't. I was just obviously sad about this relationship. Didn't know what was happening with with a faith home, but I did eventually just kept going. There was something there that drew me in, and I think one of the things that I found really refreshing coming from the really the only church back the church I'd known for most of my growing up here was there's one particular city um, in New Jersey that NJV was actively going to serve. They were serving food to the homeless, and in my previous church. There was a conversation about possibly buying a building, but when it came to the city, folks from that church were like, "Well, we can't. It's too dangerous. We." So it just felt like there wasn't a willingness to go someplace where we could actually serve and not think about like, is this actually the safest place for us? And so I was just drawn to the fact that, oh wow, this church is actually going out and doing ministry to the poor, to the marginalized. And so that was one of the things that kept me um, invested and interested in staying, other than also just the time I needed to heal. And so I just kept attending, and then eventually felt like, okay, I'm at a place where I can maybe make friends. And so at the time, I was a public school teacher, and they had an educator's life group, which I was so blown away by that. There were actual communities formed around different jobs or interests. And so I joined that life group, and that became my first life group. Um, and that was it. I was in. So
That's fascinating how this local church's ministry to the poor and marginalized was a hook for
yeah,
you to stay into the community.
yeah, it was absolutely one of the, I mean, I still talk about it to this day that um, it was just so refreshing for me. Again, so different from, I think, the mentality or um, just, yeah, I think if I had to break it down even further, the church I grew up in did so much missions work, particularly to the Philippines. Like there were mission trips to the Philippines all the time. Um, but there wasn't a real outreach to the local community. And I felt like there was even this sense of wanting to like stay that way, and to just not expand to what is even in the neighborhood. So I found that to be really attractional for me.
How did your family, which had been such a large part of your own spiritual journey, how did your family
Yeah.
understand your call to ministry?
I don't know that they still fully, I don't know that they can or do. I know that they, through the years, um, have been really encouraging and supportive. Um, my mom in particular has been very vocal about like how proud she is, which in my family context we don't say a lot of those things. We're still like, getting used to even like, yeah, like hugs and saying I love you. And for my mom in particular, who is very just not a woman of a lot of words, like it's meant a lot for me to say, oh, like if I'm speaking or if there's a video out there, she has in the past like posted on it on Facebook and has said, oh, here's my daughter, stuff like that. Like so that makes me happy. But I don't know that they have a framework for women pastors in ministry just because they haven't had that experience. And it's, they are still in a Southern Baptist context. And so um, as long as they stay in their church, they aren't going to um, have a woman pastor. So I think I found that they're generally encouraging and supportive. I think because of the differences in the styles of worship between Vineyard, even what theologically Southern Baptists and I don't, yeah, they just don't have context for it. But in general, they've been pretty supportive. Yeah,
Oh, that's fascinating. That's really interesting how at the relational level, very supportive, but at the broader, like ecclesial or theological level, there may still be some questions given
for
their
sure.
Southern Baptist context.
Yeah,
You mentioned associations within
yeah.
the Vineyard movement. For our audience who may not be familiar with these associations, which ones or one are you most involved with?
Yeah, so I actually this is my third year in the role of leading our Asian American Pacific Islander Association. And so these associations have been formed so that underrepresented groups in the vineyard movement have places and spaces for leadership development, for hospitality, and for mentorship. And they've also been developed so that underrepresented groups have a place at certain leadership tables. Um, and so it has been such a game changer. And I think I used to go to vineyard conferences. Um, and again, let me just back up and say, like, my local church context is very diverse in North Jersey. Um, we have, I think, 85 countries represented at my local church currently. And so I've grown up in North Jersey pretty much my whole entire life in an urban setting. And so diversity, being amongst immigrants, was just something I had been most comfortable in and used to. And then I attended my first Vineyard conference in 2009 and experienced some culture shock. I didn't realize how much of a majority culture um, family of churches I was a part of. And so a few years ago, I was asked to lead, and I very scarily was like, okay, I'll try my best. And I, along with our team, have been just trying to figure this out. How do we make connections and places of hospitality happen for our larger vineyard family? And so it's been it's been really exciting. It's been a lot of fun, and it's also, it's also definitely challenging because the idea of associations are still very new. But I can tell you that since the associations have been formed, my experience as a minority at national conferences at the Vineyard have been so different.
What has been your greatest joy that you've experienced helping to lead the AAPI Association at Vineyard? And what's been the greatest pain as
Sure.
you lead the AAPI Association at Vineyard?
Yeah, so the greatest joy has just been connecting with folks from all over the country, and I think I can count some of these people now as some of my closest friends just through what the association has afforded us in terms of places to gather, a retreat, different cohorts to be a part of. Um, our team, our leadership team have become quite close, and it's been such a joy to try to recreate um, those those places of fellowship and connection for our larger vineyard family. Um, so it just has been a deep joy to get to know other people, to know that we're not alone, um, to get excited about seeing one another at the various conferences, to try to um, I can tell you what's one exciting thing we're doing this year, which is a great joy, is we're trying to involve our next generation in in the learning in in Asian American identity formation. We have started mentoring our teenagers. And through a grant that we received, we're going to be able to take a lot of our teenagers, some of us, our own children, to California to do an Asian American civil rights tour for about a week. So the Vineyard USA has been trying to really focus on next gen, and we as an association are this is kind of our way of contributing to that. And I think for a lot of us on our leadership team, our great hope is that our next generation, our teenagers, will not have kind of the same hangups we did growing up as Asian Americans, and will get to figure out what it means to be Asian American earlier than I know I did. So, I mean, I'm still figuring it out, but I just didn't have any idea of Asian American history and its intersection with faith and all of that. So those are the things that have really been so exciting to see what we as an Asian American Association are able to do in this season.
I was taking notes. Did you
Sure.
mention the
Not
pain
yet.
associated? Okay. So I
I
did
was
not miss it.
I was getting to that. Um, I think what's challenging with um, yeah, I think what's challenging with the work we're doing as an Asian American Association is one, we are the smallest group, I think, of all the associations, and so we just don't have a lot of folks that we're connecting and working with, and there's just such a lack of Asian American history that's been made available to us who are now raising kids of our own. I mean, I did not grow up with any idea. I I had no idea up until maybe very recently, embarrassingly recently, because my experience has been here on the East Coast, that there were Asian Americans in our country for three, four generations. I just didn't know. And so um, I feel like that has been a huge part of why, and I connect that to the work of the associations in that um, there is, I think, a reticence to engage and connect with uh, anything even named Asian American. Um, because there's just a lack of knowledge. And I've learned a little bit about um, the model minority myth and everything kind of, and I've experienced as an immigrant growing up in New Jersey, even though I was surrounded by mostly my Hispanic friends, um, American culture was just something I wanted for myself. I needed to fit in. I really tamped down, didn't talk about, didn't want to do any more exploring of what it meant to be Filipino American. And so I was just in this assimilation mode for most of my life. Um, and so I think for a lot of us who are Asian Americans in a majority culture, that plays into our willingness or need to explore what it means to be Asian American. And so then I think for those of us in our ministry context in the vineyard even, um, there's a maybe, why do I need to explore? Why do I need to learn? I'm doing okay. And so I think I've come across that for sure. But also there have been very sweet folks who I have met who are through no fault of their own, as a result of growing up in majority culture, are it's not like a reticence, but it's a fear. They are straight up scared to be in an Asian American context because for them, they don't know how to be. Um, and I've prayed with people through that. And so there's that too. So um, yeah, it's both very exciting, but also there are um, definite challenges in terms of us even coming to terms with what it means to be Asian American, to then want to engage more in what all that means for us in our ministry context and even just for ourselves.
I hear you. I hear you a lot. What you've described, I have seen and experienced as well. Thank you for sharing that so poignantly. To circle back to some of your own journey and formation process, when did your self understanding of being a Filipino American become pastorally or even spiritually or theologically significant. So at some point it's like, oh, this thing here, my being Asian American, my being Filipino American, matters.
Yeah,
I'm curious when that light bulb came on to you and how that happened.
sure. Um, I don't think I had to confront it or thought deeply about it. I think I felt a real like conviction um, when the murder of George Floyd happened. That was the moment for me where I had to really think about through some conversations, difficult conversations with people in my family and folks in the Filipino American community. Um, and even for myself, like, I had to confront where do I fit in the black white binary? I am neither black nor white. What does it mean for me to be Asian American? And how do I think about this injustice? And then how do I engage it? Um, and so that for me started a journey of exploring. I think that was my first like foray into, okay, what does it mean to be Asian American? What do I believe about race in this country? Why is it that um, I feel one way and um, my parents and their generation feel a different way? Um, and so I really kind of had to do that work. That's when I first um, really started exploring Asian American history, specifically Filipino American history. There was shortly after that, a cohort that was made available for Filipino Americans um, in ministry. And that was so essential for my understanding. We explored relations between America and the Philippines and the colonial mentality. And I just could see how all of that really affected the way I did ministry, the way I showed up, the way I maybe felt like I didn't belong, all of the just growing up so deferential. And I remember this one moment. And it's beautiful how we honor, how we bow. I remember praying one day and I just felt like I got this picture of God, like kind of like pointing his finger on my spine and making me like straighten up, like he's causing me to just stand up straighter and to really look at him. And I felt like in that moment, what God was saying was, you can actually use your voice. Um, and I've given you something to say, and you don't have to be hunched over all the time. Um, and so, I kind of go back to that picture all the time because I need that reminder, because my default is to um, just defer and be intimidated and scared. And I'm still in that process. I love learning. I love um, really figuring out like what has led me to think in the ways that I have, what has even caused me to, I mean, it's affected my view of God for sure. The way I've been raised in my family of origin and even culturally, the lack of or having women, people in my life to encourage me in the Filipino American context.
It strikes me that one's Christian faith and church belonging could support that type of discovery and growth process or not.
Right.
Say a little bit about how your faith has helped
Hmm.
and your church service has helped or not helped in that wholeness of kind of back straightening, so to speak.
Yeah, so I think for me, because Filipino American, my Filipino Americanness, or at least my cursory exploration of it and my experience of it, was tied with my church growing up in the context of the Southern Baptist denomination. You can't, it's just not, you're not allowed. You're not allowed. And so again, like going back to when I started attending the Vineyard Church, and um, there was some wrestling uh, initially, um, but I could not deny that the Lord was using women in ministry, full-time folks in ministry, women pastors, to further his kingdom. And so I think in that sense, coming into the vineyard, all of a sudden being, I grew up with really seeking approval of my parents, elders, the community. Um, and so being in a more expansive place, it was like giving me permission. Being in a more expansive church family gave me permission to really explore all of that. And so, yeah, I think I'm just in this conversation, I'm coming to understand, funnily enough, not being in the Filipino American church context actually helped me and pushed me or encouraged me towards exploring what it meant for me to be Filipino American at a deeper level.
How is that for a takeaway? Who would have thunk?
Yeah, no, it's so true. I just didn't see a need, or I don't know that I was at the time able to even, well, it was just in the water. We were all immigrants. We were all just trying to make it. There was this sense of survival, who had time to explore what it meant to be, like, my parents certainly didn't. They were working nights and 3, 4 jobs at a time, so that's, I think, at play too. So I think, and maybe that's a part of their legacy, like, I am at a healthier place in my life than they were at this stage in theirs because of that. And so I'm able to explore. I have this permission to really think about it and pray about, I had this I took my kids to the Philippines last summer, and it was their first trip. My son is 14. Well, he was 13 then, my daughter was 9. Um, and I had this realization, because for a long time in my life, I was just like, didn't want anything to do with my parents. And my parents were also on our trip with us last summer. For a long time, growing up, didn't want anything to do with my parents, was embarrassed about their accents, didn't want to bring my Filipino food to school, didn't want anything to do with being Filipino. Um, I get to the Philippines last year with my parents, and we experienced the country together and the beauty, and met up with family, and was struck at the fact that, oh wow, like, I wouldn't mind living here. I can see, and my husband and I have talked about, like, what would it look like to do ministry in Asia, in the Philippines. Um, and so that just felt like a full circle moment for me. Like I've healed from maybe some of the things that I thought were just so painful, and um, everything I wanted to kind of run away from. Now to be able to appreciate um, the land, the country, like the topography of the Philippines was something I never appreciated before. Just the beauty and the land, and um, because to go back there would be wrong. To go back there would be undoing all of the quote unquote hard work that my parents have worked so hard for to bring us to America, right? So, but at the same time, I think it's a real mark of healing, at least for me, and how I think about the Philippines, and being Filipino American.
That trip last summer planted some seeds.
But yeah, it did. It absolutely did. Yeah.
My last question for you, what do you want the broader church, including Asian American Christian communities, to better understand about women called to lead, especially Asian American women?
I think that Asian American women just need to be considered. Like that very thing of being like, if more men in leadership could just be curious if Asian American women could potentially like do something different, or lead, or perhaps even give them resources to grow in their gifts. Or I know for myself personally, people had to like, and I would encourage the church to take risks, take a little bit of a risk, give someone a little bit more responsibility or authority, and see what they could do with it. Um, the invitation, I think, is key. What can you invite an Asian American woman in ministry to? Um, and I think it might mean to be like persistent and maybe patient, because I think, at least for me personally, there was a lot to overcome, and invest in that internal work for the women in your churches. Understand that that's really an important piece of things. If they're really quick to say no to something, dig a little bit deeper. Like, why not? So I think there's just this idea of, again, I keep getting the word like expansive, and I really feel like that's what's made a difference for me is, can we just expand our imagination for what women in ministry can do just a little bit? Um, I think Asian American women bring a lot of different gifts to the table, and our churches would be better off um, with women in ministry and involved. And so I would ask folks in leadership to explore that with the Lord, and be on the lookout for women, Asian American women, and encourage their gifts. Um, Something I tell people all the time is, a few years ago, my daughter said to me, as an 8 or 9 year old would say, she's like, "Oh, mom, I think when I'm older, I want to be a pastor just like you." And I was like, "Oh, I kind of dismissed it, like, "Oh, that's nice. That's great. Maybe you'll be a pastor someday. That would be amazing." And then I like almost broke down, because I would have never been able to say that for myself at 8 or 9 years old. And so I think this matters a great deal for our next generation, for um, Asian American girls to have an imagination for what God could be calling them to in ministry. Um, and so I think that's a part of, I think, why this work matters is is there are Asian American little girls that are called to ministry, and if we are not cognizant, or even encouraging of our Asian American women in in the church, um, those little girls wouldn't have anyone to look up to, and to have as a model for them. And so yeah, and who knows? I mean, she changes her mind every few months. But it was more, I think, a God moment for me to be able to, like, it was like God saying, like, okay, it really does make a difference. As scared as you are to do whatever it is you're doing, like, it makes a difference to your daughter, to the girls that are out there that don't know that this is a possibility for them. So just wanted to add that in there, because I think God really encouraged me that day through my daughter.
That is an encouragement, and I hope that this conversation has been an encouragement to our audience. Thank you, Mary Ann, for sharing your faith journey and family journey with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.